Wavetechh made them.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Wavetech from Wavetech Beats. In today's video, we're going to discuss the channel EQ in Logic Pro X. The channel EQ. Now, you know there's two different EQs. You have the channel EQ and the linear EQ. Me personally, I like to use the channel EQ on my tracks, and then I like to use the linear EQ in my mastering phase. So when I'm mixing, I like to use the channel EQ. Now, a lot of people tend to use the third-party plugins. You know, I have third-party plugins, but I tend to find that the using of this particular EQ, not only the workflow is just a lot smoother. It gives you a ton. It gives you some presets, but I like to get in there and I like to manipulate my own sounds. And basically, when you're mixing and you're mastering, that's basically what you're doing, is you're manipulating sounds. So I mean, the channel EQ itself, it's there to do one of two things. You're either going to boost the sound or you're going to cut a sound. Okay, boost or cut, or both. So the one of two can wind up to be both at the same time. All right. So, and I mean, basically, it's very simple. As I bring up my screen, basically, it's simple as all outdoors. Because when you have the channel when you have an EQ period, all right, you have to understand there is a normal audio range, and it goes from 20 megahertz to 20,000. That is, the ear can only hear the low end is so much, and the high end is so much. All right. So what I've done is let me bring it up. How about we just do that? Let's bring it up. We're gonna bring it up right on here. I'm gonna play with this for a little bit, and let's see here. Nope, I don't want that. I want to go here. We're gonna bring it up. Here we go. All right, so this is what the channel EQ looks like. Now, as you can see, we have some shapes up here. All right. Now, these particular shapes here, there's three different shapes. So you have a bandwidth shape, and mainly these are like your mid ranges. Okay. As you can see, it's the hertz, the dBs, and the gain. The gain and the direction. I call it the direction. Here's what people feel. People tend to want to follow exactly what somebody says, and you cannot do that. You have to get in there and play around and understand. I want to show you what it looks like and how to manipulate a specific sound, and then I give you some insight on why I do this, and then you have to get in there and you have to do it yourself. That's the only way you become great at something that you think you're good at. Or if you're not good, that's the only way you become good. And to get better, you have to do it over and over and over. So these particular shapes up here are your bandwidth shapes. These are your mid ranges. This is where you get the in-between sounds at. All right. I tend to focus on these a lot less than I focus on the high pass and the low pass filters. So this is what I call a shelf band. So this manipulates the signal. It cuts the signal out. So you can either cut it low or you can cut it high. And then, of course, these are the filters. This is the high pass filter, and this is the low pass filter. Now, here's what's crazy, because you would think that when you're looking at this being down here would be called low pass. No. The high pass filter cuts the lows out and lets the highs come through. Excuse me. And the low pass filter cuts the lows out and lets the highs come through. All right. So what's crazy about it is it looks opposite, but the way that it works is you basically just want to make sure that how to mix properly to keep your sound from being muddy. I generally start with EQing, and let me show you something here. Let me bring up my mix window. So like right now, if I hit the play button on this track, actually I have it soloed out. It's always good if you're gonna demonstrate something to make sure everything is not soloed out. So what this is these are my levels, and as I go through and I EQ things, these levels will change. Okay, so when you're mixing, the hardest part about producing is getting your levels together. You want to blend everything. It's like when your parents or your wife or whoever you're messing with is in the kitchen cooking, and they making that special, let's say they making that special holiday pie. Each ingredient in the mixing process makes it that much better. In the mixing process, you start out with getting your sounds, and then getting the levels, and then getting the EQ. But the EQ and the levels all play a major part. So what I like to do is, I'll jump out of here real quick and make sure I got this soloed out so you can see what I'm talking about. So always, when I use this, I always make sure I got the analyze on. As you can see, I hit the analyze and took it off. Why did I take it off? Because just to show you for those purposes. All right. So now, low pass. I'm gonna cut some of these lows out. Now I tend to take mine to about 35. And I set it like that. So what I've done is I've taken out some of that hiss. On the back end, what we can't hear in normal headphones or speakers, somebody else can hear in loud speakers. So you kind of want to like cut that sound off just a little bit. And then, because the way that I like to have my mids stick out, or sounds that have like the crisp snares and everything, I tend to focus on using the low pass filter to cut some of the highs out, and that way everything just blends right in together. Okay, so but I tend to do this. Now you see how that took it and it made it just muffled a little bit, and then when I take it back, see the difference? Again, it's allowing the lows to come through. So this is the low pass filter. All right, now I usually take this down to about 500, so I'll let it ride. As you can see, it's got a nice little loop. Now I can come down here and adjust this to a certain way. See how I did that? Now the shape of your filter itself determines how the sound is manipulated. All right. So this is the 808, and I also like to take this shelf here and I'll move it to about 50 hertz, and then I'll bring it up. Now you see it got a little louder. Now if I take it down, see how I cut it? But like I said, I always like to kick it up to about, this is the gain, so I always like to kick my gain up a little bit, because I want to get that punch through. All right, and this is the 808. Now, typically, I'm showing you this because I want you to understand. Now, one thing I didn't show you is you see how this over here. This is my volume level, okay, and I got it at a negative 11.2 dBs. When it originally starts out, it starts out at 0. All right, so but I always take mine down to a little bit below because I want to be able to understand that I want to have some headroom. And with my headroom, it gives me room to play around. So I come back over here, and now here's what's crazy. I'm showing you this, and in reality, I'm gonna go back in because a lot of people side chain their kick and their snare. I mean, their kick and their 808. I EQ mine so they can ride with each other. All right. So let's do that. Let me do that. I just make it easier. So I started here, but I need to go here to this kick. All right. So all right, you see how this is? And do you hear that in the back? So let me do this. Remember, now in the beginning, I usually tend to take both of them and put them at 35. But I'm gonna come over here and take some of this out. See how that muffled? It's not muffled, but if you listen to this, you can hear the high end on the kick from the overhead mic that was recorded on. If I take it down to 500, alright, so I'll take it here to about, I'll take it there to about 10-20 megahertz. Now, some things I still do the same. Alright, I just want to make sure that you understand that. I'll raise the gain up here. Alright, now, here's where it gets a little crazy, because I like to take and raise the gain on this mid-range, but then I come down here and I shrink it down. I want it to be a narrow slope when that kick hits. Alright, and you can adjust this to any range that you want. It's all according on what your ear hears. Now, the one thing a lot of producers, when they're showing this, or beat makers when they're showing this, they never tell you it's good to have good quality monitors, and it's also good to have good quality headphones. When you have good quality stuff, you tend to hear a lot more. So over here, we'll take this down just a little bit because I don't want the kick to really overdo itself. All right, and then I like to bring up this to about right there. All right, I don't fool with the highs. When it's the kicks, my drums to be punchy. Now, like I said earlier, you can go in here and go into these over here, but I don't do that. All right, now I got the kick set the way I want it. Now I could save this as a preset because majority of the time I do most of my kicks like that. I tend to want to keep the same drum sounds and just manipulate them. But then remember, I started this over here, right? Alright, so the opposite of what I did is I bring this down. And bringing that down, I want to narrow that just as well. So it's almost like I'm mimicking exactly the sound. I still bring this up a little bit. Now that's how I EQ my drums, my 808 drum, and my kick drum. It's very simple, man. The biggest thing is you have to get in there and you have to know how to listen. It takes time. It takes time, trust me. I've been making beats for about a little over 10 years. I just got this part down pat. So it takes time, man. You're not going to, Rome is not going to be built in a day. If you're trying to make $1 million and be an engineer, that's one thing. But it's going to take time to make $1 million. All right. Unless you know someone, you hit a lick, it's going to take time. All right. So harness your craft, man. But this is how I like to use my channel EQ. Now, with that being said, I always like to close it out because having plugins open will always take away from the CPU of your computer. And that's just regular. I haven't touched nothing else. Alright. You want everything to kind of flow together. When my kick hits, the low hits, but they kind of balance each other out. That's what you want to do, alright? I learned that from watching, man, Ocean. So shout out to Ocean. And I watched Ocean do it, but what I had to do was I had to go in there and understand it. I had to touch it myself, alright? So, with that being said, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and click that bell, because that bell will let you know when I'm doing my next video. Alright? Once again, man, it's your boy Wavetech from Wavetechh Beats, your new beat prophet. I'm holla at y'all, man. I see y'all when I see y'all.